Okay, let me ask you. Have you ever had one of those days where you felt a little overwhelmed, like a little scattered, like you had way too many things to do and not enough time to do them? And so during that time, you start to feel a little frantic, a little uncomfortable. Your eyes start getting really wide and people ask you how you're doing and you're like, "I'm fine." And the only thing you can think of is, "I'm never going to get everything done today that I need to get done." That's me today. That's me this week. So many of you know that I began a few months ago taping all of a month's worth of podcasts during 1 week a month. This is that week. I'm kind of losing my mind. Yeah, 22 podcast episodes to be taped in just a few days' time. I can't get anything done. You know how I also like to have my emails down to 0 in my inbox on Fridays? I think before I just finished taping the last episode, I think I had 78 now from 0 just a couple days ago. And I don't even want to open it up again because I know it's probably going to be more like 92. So, how do I get through this? Well, actually, I've been getting better and better at it. And I always reference Yoga Dog and, the reminder to breathe. But if you listen to our podcast episode of Tuesday this week with Heather Dominic of Business Miracles, I want to give another shout out to her. I interviewed her actually a couple months ago. And in that interview, it was one of the most interesting and intriguing things that has happened to me professionally as well as personally. Right before the interview, I wanted to get on her website and kind of learn a little bit more about her. And she works with highly sensitive entrepreneurs. And I really didn't know what that meant. So I wanted to get on her website and take a look at it. So the moment I got on her website, there's this quiz about what is a highly sensitive entrepreneur? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to click that. And I took this quiz. And when it was all done, I didn't get the results done in time. I think they had just finished downloading when she and I started taping. And so I was saying, hey, I just took the quiz. She goes, what are you? And I said, I have no idea. Does it even tell me on the quiz? She's like, yeah, that's the way I set it up. And so when I got done, as I'm looking it up, she said, well, I know that I am a super uber highly sensitive entrepreneur. And I'm like, that sounds cool. I don't even know what that means. Turns out I am a super uber highly sensitive entrepreneur, which what it really means is that there are things that stress me out that might not stress out the normal person, quote unquote normal, the other 80% of the world that's not unnormal like I am, or that like she is. But what was really interesting is that she talks a lot about being overwhelmed. And that really, when if we want to help ourselves, whether you're like me and a super uber or highly sensitive or not even sensitive at all, and I don't mean sensitive like you care about people. I mean sensitive like things make you act and react a little bit more easily than other people. Maybe you're a little, more nervous. Maybe you're a little more anxious. Maybe you're a little, shorter tempered, those types of things. But there's a lot to it, actually. Um, but she says, instead of thinking about being overwhelmed, think about being in the state of overwhelm. So if I say I'm overwhelmed, that makes it very personal to me instead of I am in a state of overwhelm, meaning there's a lot of things on my plate right now, and I need to figure out how to guide myself through it. And I can't tell you enough how much just this one little quiz and some of her like podcasts and things have really impacted me. I'm talking about her nonstop to my husband. He's like, who is this woman? She probably doesn't even know that I'm like becoming a fan of hers. Totally. I think I've told her that though. But the reason I'm sharing this with you today is I'm having one of those weeks where I'm in overwhelm, but I'm not allowing this week to overwhelm me. And the reason being is that I know the difference. I chose this week. I chose to start to have these weeks where I do the podcast all in 1 week time because then there's better control. I have more control over the rest of the other 3 weeks of the month. And I have better control over my system for my podcast. And I choose to make this happen during these times. And it allows me to think about other times when I'm really busy. And maybe you feel the same way. So when I start out saying, have you ever felt those times where you're like overwhelmed and there's so much to do? When we all have so much to do that it feels overwhelming, that we are in a state of overwhelm, we have some choices and we do have some control. It just doesn't always feel that way. And I think it's because we don't always recognize what we can control. So, just a quick little motivation for you today and for me is that, first of all, I always start with yoga dog and breathe, especially in those moments where the feeling of overwhelm starts to increase. That's when that breathing to me is really, really critical. And I'll tell you what, because I've been so busy this week, the first couple days of the week, I forgot to meditate. And so last night I said, "You can't do this, Sherlock." You know that the meditation is really important. Not only do I breathe throughout the day, but the meditation is really important to me. The second thing is to remember why I'm doing this, why I put myself in these situations. There's a lot I have to do. I'm running 2 companies. I've got a staff of 8 people. There's a lot to do. And sometimes it feels like it's too much, but it really doesn't feel like that any other week, except for when I have all these things that seem to be a lot of them back to back, and that there's a lot of steps that have to be taking place. So not only do in the podcast week, do I tape an episode, then I write the show notes, I give the show title, I write what I'm going to write about them on LinkedIn and our other social media when we promote them, so that I know that I have the freshest excitement of that person that I just met. So I have all these things that I have to do right after, but I do this on purpose and I'm doing it for a reason. So instead of allowing it to stress me out, remind myself, you're choosing this for a greater good. And as I choose that for a greater good, that gives me a sense of peace. So if you are in those moments also where you have this feeling of maybe overwhelm or too many things, ask yourself, did you put yourself in this reason, in this place for the right reason? Or did you put yourself in this place because you weren't thinking about how to organize? And the reason I say this is, the reason I tape the podcast all in one week now is because almost a year ago, I realized I was losing my mind trying to tape all these in the middle of doing other things. And so I might be on a track of writing for a book and have to do a podcast episode. So you can't move from mindset too easily. Or I might be having a great business meeting and then have to go into a podcast, which means I couldn't give either one my complete attention, which is why giving it 1 week allows me to focus where I need to be focused. And some other things have to be put on the back burner. So when you remind yourself why you're doing things, if it's on track, then give yourself a little bit of a break. If it's craziness because you didn't keep yourself in a pattern, then decide what you want to change and understand you can change. Um, I need to take breaks. I need to be able to step away, even if it's for 3 or 4 minutes, just to give myself not only that deep breath, but a different vantage point. This office is great, but sometimes I need to go upstairs and just look out the window and see who's walking by. But the final thing that I know that during these times when there's so many things that I have to do is I try and eliminate as many distractions as possible. That means that my phone is not only the volume off, but it is upside down. That means that while I'm taping, my email is off. There is nothing else that I want to distract me from what I need to do at that time. And when I get done with each episode, none of those things come back on until those steps that I need to do right after are all done. What this has meant for me in the last 5 months of operating this way is that I'm still highly uh, not stressed. I still have that high energy buzz of nervousness, maybe a little stress during the week that I tape. But I know that when I'm done and I'm done for the day, I am not thinking about anything. I've shut the book on that day and it's good. And by doing this, my stress is released. So I know there's a lot of you, especially right now as we begin, we're just two less than 2 weeks into a brand new month and a brand new year, that there's all of a sudden a lot of things moving and going on again. Give yourself that break. Take a deep breath. Remind yourself what you're doing and why you're doing it. Give yourself a pat on the back if you are organizing in a way that helps you. And if not, take control of that. And finally, make sure that you're taking the right breaks that you need to let your mind have a little distraction, but don't allow distractions when you're trying to complete. That will help you stay on track and feel much more like you've accomplished your goals. Happy Thursday.